The fish. I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of water, with my hook fast in the corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all.
Oh, no, you're here at Headmistress Press's, our grand finale of the Collectibles series, where we'll be hearing today from Robin Becker, talking about and reading from the poetry and hearing from Elizabeth Bishop herself, cards number 18 and 27. And I would love to acknowledge who we heard from in those fabulous readings throughout the year. And many of you in the room here were here for a number of those readings. We started in August with Vicky Now and Wu Sao, and we went in September to Marty McConnell, and Marty's tremendously vibrant and poignant discussion of Adrienne Rich's work. In October, Chinny Chen shared their journey and friendship with the poet Monica Hand. And how could any of us forget in November when Constance Merritt wowed us with her work and the work of Emily Dickinson. Alicia Mountain joined us in December, sharing the work of Hilda Doolittle. Leslie Newman was next to start us in the new year in January with quite a lecture on the work of Gertrude Stein. We went to February, right as Minnie Bruce Pratt was getting ready to release her new book. Joined in the room with us, her poet of influence, the extraordinary Naomi Raplansky, joined us in the room. And Julie Marie Wade joined us with her study of Audre Lorde. What a feature we had in April. We had the great treat of Jessica Jacobs and Nicole Brown joining us together, but they also shared their love of Muriel Rukeyser and also bringing back a conversation of Adrienne Rich. And in March, we had J.P. Howard talking about the work and the legacy of the poet Pat Parker. Again, if you were here for any of these readings, I never ever forget these readings. Judith Barrington was our June reader, sharing the work of another poet that I had the opportunity to meet when I was in Nebraska, which is where I first met Robin, Janice Gould. It's been an extraordinary journey through the Headmistress Press Collectibles series of the trading cards. But it's been so much more than just the trading cards. It's really been about the legacy that the poets who came before created for the poets who were reading, and propelling us into the future with how we continue to think about our lives as members of the LBT community, and how poetry has helped shape those lives over the decades. Again, Naomi Raplansky brought us back almost 9 decades, right. In fabulous. Well, today, my friends, I am so excited to welcome all of you for our grand finale of the Collectibles reading series. As I said, it's been a year of truly just outstanding pairings, from the poets of the Headmistress Press fabulous collectibles trading card series. This has been the vision of the poets, Mary Miriam and Risa Dennenberg, who of course are here with us today. Well, we'll be hearing today in our reading, Robin Becker reading from the work and talking about the work of Elizabeth Bishop, as well as Robin's own amazing catalog of poetry. I'm your host for today, Sandy, and I'm the author of Boats for Women from Salmon Poetry. And I can't express enough how filled with gratitude I've been to be able to be with you every month as we have listened and learned through this year-long series of poets through their legacies. And today, I want to remind you, for what's one of the final times today, that you too can own the cards that is the series. You can have a wonderful mementos of our entire reading series that we've shared together for the past 12 months by picking up your own cards. They're so fun to have, as well as titles from the Headmistress Press catalog. We'll be sharing in the chat periodically how you can pick up the cards and the books. And of course, in that chat, please send your appreciation to today's featured reader and our open mic poets, as well as at the end of today, I'll also be reading the names of all of the poets that have joined us this year, and many of you are in the room. Those of you who've read in the open mic, we're going to be acknowledging you one final time today. Well, as I mentioned, we began our series last July. We've been here every third Saturday of the month, and every month I've been able to be with you, with poets I've longed to meet, with poets I've read along the way. And today I have the unbelievable pleasure to introduce what I know will be another memorable experience to you, with a poet who personally has been a mentor to me and to so many folks. Of course, I am talking about the indomitable Robin Becker, card number 18. And Robin will be reading the work of Elizabeth Bishop, card number 27. Folks, I have so much that I could say about Robin, and if I started, I would not stop. So I want to cut to why we're really here. Just to say, I love Robin Becker so much. My book, Boats for Women, would not exist without Robin. I would not, I know that to be true. I've learned so much from reading Robin's work and from being in Robin's presence when I had the good fortune to have that happen. Let me now share. So I'm just going to stop there for now because I have too many stories otherwise. Let me share a little bit with you about Robin Becker from her card, and I will ad lib just ever so slightly from the card. Well, Robin Becker was born in 1951 in Philadelphia, where early influences included her Russian Jewish heritage and iconic lesbian and feminist poets from the 60s and 70s. She earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree at Boston University and had taught at the Pennsylvania State University since 1994. She was a distinguished professor, and she has only since recently moved from being distinguished to being distinguished in the realm of retirement, for however that looks like for Robin. Of her, I know, right? Clap for that. Of her, which means she's influenced so many poets, not just at Penn State, but many, many places. Many of you in the room, I know some of you have so benefited from your relationships with Robin. Well, Robin's books have been published, numbers of them have been published in the Pittsburgh Poetry Series, including the Lambda Award-winning book, All American Girl from 1996. I could never hear poems enough from that book. Moving on to Tiger Heron, 2000, and 2014 is on the card, but I want to now remind you of some of the other titles. The Horse Fair from 2000, Domain of Perfect Affection from 2006, and the latest collection from 2018, all of these from Pittsburgh Poetry Series, The Black Bear Inside Me. Robin also published Venetian Blue. It's an exquisite chapbook of poems about art, which was published by the Frick Art and Historical Center in Pittsburgh. She has received fellowships from the Bunting Institute at Harvard, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Robin's poetry and reviews have appeared in, among others, The New Yorker, the American Poetry Review, and the New York Times. And her column, Field Notes, appeared in the Women's Review of Books, where she served as the poetry editor for many, many years. Her work has been praised as Clear as Open Windows by Ellen Bass and Deft and Daring by Alison Bechdel. And you can read many, many reviews of her work where you hear the praise and accolades of a poet really who has and will continue to stand the test of time. As the poet she will be sharing with us today has. Her poet of influence, Elizabeth Bishop. Elizabeth Bishop was born in 1911 and died in 1979, was born in Worcester, Massachusetts. She lost her parents and grew up with her grandparents in Nova Scotia. She graduated from Vassar, where she began a lifelong friendship with Marianne Moore. She was also great friends with Robert Lowell. She wrote poems and stories and won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry, the National Book Award, and the Neustadt International Prize for Literature. For many, many years, she lived in Brazil with her longtime partner, Laura de Macedo Soares, and was sustained by an inheritance until late in life, when she then began to teach at Harvard. When Mae Swenson tried to persuade Bishop to contribute to her anthology, The Women Poets in English, Bishop responded, quote, "I don't like things compartmentalized like that. And literature is literature, no matter who produces it." She wrote Breakfast Song, quoted on this card here in the series, for her last lover, Alice Methusel, who was the most important person in her life until her death. And her anguish at losing Methusel to a man temporarily inspired what is probably considered her most famous poem, that villanelle of all villanelles, One Art. Would you please join me in welcoming and sending appreciation to Robin Becker sharing the work today of Elizabeth Bishop.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Robin.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you to Mary, Risa, and Rita May for your work on Headmistress Press. Thank you, Sandy, for guiding the collectibles this year and for your insights and your generosity. Thank you, everybody, for coming today for the presentation wherever you are in the world, around the country. I'm happy to join this distinguished group of poets who've read their work and the work of other lesbian poets in the series. Today, I'm going to spend most of my time on love poems, Elizabeth Bishop's and my own. My goal here is to ignite your interest in returning to Bishop's work with a renewed curiosity about her life and her work. To start, I'd like to share with you one example of how Bishop's work inhabits my consciousness. Each year, driving from my home in Pennsylvania to this summer cabin I rent in New Hampshire, I pass through New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and finally Vermont. The first sign says, "Welcome to Vermont." Quickly, another one comes into view that says, "Moose, stay alert." Each time, surprised anew, I laugh out loud. How many drivers, I wonder, think immediately of Bishop's great poem? And what makes her poem, The Moose, so unforgettable anyway? Several things. As I'm driving along into New Hampshire, this is what I'm thinking. How did Bishop transform an ordinary moment into a transcendent one? How did she create, during a bus trip from Nova Scotia to Boston, a time-bound, shared human community? I love this poem for the provisional home the bus offers and the mysterious, dreamlike appearance of this magical creature, the moose, like an emissary from another world. In a 1977 interview, Elizabeth Spires asked Bishop how long it took to compose The Moose, which appeared in Geography 3, Bishop's last individual volume. Bishop replied, "I started that years ago, 20 years ago at least." It's a long poem, an inspired poem, and I invite everybody to look it up and experience its richness. Of the early Bishop poems I encountered, the often anthologized poem, The Fish, has also stayed with me. In another interview, Bishop said, "I think geography comes first in my work, and then animals. But I like people too. I've written a few poems about people." I want to share an audio recording with scrolling stanzas of Elizabeth Bishop reading The Fish. Sandy, our host extraordinaire, has found a recording with no ads in it, which I failed to do. And so Sandy will now share the recording. Thank you, Sandy.
The fish. I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of water, with my hook fast in the corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. He hung a grunting weight, battered and venerable and homely. Here and there, his brown skin hung in strips like ancient wallpaper, and its pattern of darker brown was like wallpaper. Shapes like full-blown roses, stained and lost through age. He was speckled with barnacles, fine rosettes of lime, and infested with tiny white sea lice, and underneath 2 or 3 rags of green weed hung down. While his gills were breathing in the terrible oxygen, frightening gills, fresh and crisp with blood that can cut so badly, I thought of the coarse white flesh packed in like feathers, the big bones and the little bones, the dramatic reds and blacks of his shiny entrails, and the pink swim bladder like a big peony. I looked into his eyes, which were far larger than mine, but shallower and yellowed. The irises back and packed with tarnished tinfoil, seen through lenses of old scratched isinglass. They shifted a little, but not to return my stare. It was more like the tipping of an object toward the light. I admired his sullen face, the mechanism of his jaw. And then I saw that from his lower lip, if you could call it a lip, grim, wet, and weapon-like, hung 5 old pieces of fish line, or 4, and a wire leader with the swivel still attached, with all their 5 big hooks grown firmly in his mouth. A green line, frayed at the end where he broke it, 2 heavier lines, and a fine black thread still crimped from the strain and snap when it broke and he got away. Like nettles with their ribbons frayed and wavering, the 5-haired beard of wisdom trailing from his aching jaw. I stared and stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat. From the pool of bilge where oil had spread a rainbow around the rusted engine, to the bailer rusted orange, the sun-cracked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunnels, until everything was rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. And I let the fish go.
Thank you, Sandy. My friend, the prose writer Leslie Lawrence, calls the fish a praise song to the moral value of close observation. Can you guys hear me? The details of wonderful accuracy and metaphor, and Bishop's admiration for this creature's survival after so many efforts at capture, all build to a personal epiphany we all feel. So in a single stanza of 70 lines, in a banged-up fishing boat with rusted equipment, she takes us on a remarkable inner and outer journey. Another way that Bishop's work has entered my own is through the injection of Bishop's words and phrases. Adrienne Rich might call this practice part of the continuum of lesbian writing, incorporating our histories into our poems. Somebody else might just call it stealing. For example, in my poem, Men as Friends, from the Black Bear Inside Me, I end with the line, "And in trout season, he leaves in my fridge 2 rainbows." Encountering the word rainbow, will readers think of the closing line from the fish? Until everything was rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go. For me, the word rainbow belongs to Elizabeth Bishop, and I enjoy partaking in that belonging. In another example, The Bite, B-I-G-H-T, Bishop's 36-line description of a boatyard, ends on these lines. All the untidy activity continues. Awful, but cheerful. In my poem titled Sad Sestina from the Horse Fair, I use the phrase, December's awful cheerfulness. Echoing Bishop's line, the juxtaposition of awful and cheerful will always signal Bishop's boatyard for me. As an aside, Bishop asked that her gravestone in Hope Cemetery in Worcester, Massachusetts, be incised with, all the untidy activity continues. Awful, but cheerful. Her gravestone bears that inscription. Since Bishop's death in 1979, volumes of letters, previously unpublished poems and drafts of poems, biographies, and criticism have provided a tremendous amount of information on her life and work. We can read analysis of her famous reticence and learn how she was seen by her contemporaries, Adrienne Rich, James Merrill, Robert Lowell, and others. Several students in her classes at Harvard have written memoirs, and biographies by Bonnie Costello, Laurie Goldenson, Brett Millier, and Thomas Travisano all provide important and interesting perspectives on the writer considered by many to be one of the most important poets of the 20th century. Though I was acquainted with a few of Bishop's poems in college, I didn't read or study them until years later. As a graduate student in creative writing at Boston University in 1973, I was struggling with my lesbianism, trying to come out, wondering how I could find models of lesbian poets. That year, the American Psychiatric Association removed the diagnosis of homosexuality from the second edition of its Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That gives you some sense of the time. Back to grad school. One Tuesday, arriving to my weekly grad poetry workshop with 12 copies of a love poem from which I had carefully deleted all pronouns, I was dismayed to see that week we had a sub. The regular teacher, Ann Sexton, was, we later learned, in a psychiatric hospital, and her close friend, the poet Maxine Kumin, had agreed to step in for her. After reading my poem aloud to my polite peers, who made politely no mention of the absent pronouns, I was stunned when Maxine Kumin spoke. The problem with this poem, she said clearly, is that it has no pronouns. We don't know if the poem is about two women, two men, or a man and a woman. Does it matter? I asked, barely audible. It matters if you want it to matter, she boomed. Later, I retitled the poem, A Woman Leaving a Woman. Why? It was the 1970s, and I wanted my poems to show lesbian relationships. I had struggled to come out, and damn it, I wanted to be visible. Bishop, coming of age in a very different time, may have felt differently. She refused to allow her poems to be published in all women's journals or magazines, a decision I couldn't appreciate at the time. In a Paris Review interview given a few years before her death, she said that she considered herself a strong feminist, but that she wanted to be judged on the quality of her work and not on her gender or sexual orientation. In 1975, at 23, just beginning to send my poems out to magazines, I received the following letter in the mail. Dear Miss Becker, by a completely mysterious coincidence this morning, I received this letter meant for you in my mailbox. As you can see, the post office had stuck my forwarding address on it. I lived on Brattle Street, right near Fuller Street, I think, so probably they had letters to be forwarded to me in a heap and put the address on your letter too by mistake. Well, I can't figure it out, really. I'm sorry that I did open it without looking at the name on the envelope. And since I'm used to receiving poems in the mail, I went right on looking. But of course then noticed the little note for you. When I saw your telephone number on your manuscript, I called it, and a young lady told me you had recently moved. She thought the landlord knew your new address, and now I am waiting for her to call me back so I can re-forward this to the right address and the right person. She has just called, and so I am putting this in the mail now. Congratulations for Afra having taken one poem, at least. Sincerely, Elizabeth Bishop. P.S. Didn't I meet you once for a moment at John Brennan's in Duxbury? The name sounds familiar. This is really all very odd. I had met Bishop briefly at the home of my graduate school professor, John Brennan, in Duxbury. I wrote a polite thank you note. At the time, Bishop was teaching across the Charles River at Harvard, about to publish her 1976 last volume, Geography 3. That book, with its scant 9 poems, took me in. Among my favorites, Crusoe in England, The Moose, The End of March. But the love poems were the ones I was after. And here I found one art. Being rather literal-minded, I had to learn, much later, from the poet Jan Freeman, that Crusoe in England was also a love poem. So for today's foray into Bishop's work and mine, I'll focus on love poems. Bishop traveled with friends and lovers in her 20s and 30s to Key West, where she bought a home, to Europe, to New England. At 40, traveling to South America on a freighter, she stopped in Rio to meet up with several people she'd known in New York. There she fell in love with Maria Carlotta Castelat de Marcedo Suarez, known as Lota, and spent 15 years in Brazil, where she wrote many of the poems for which she's known. Bishop arrived in Brazil in 1951, the year I was born, and sent her poem, The Shampoo, to her close friend and mentor, Marianne Moore, in a letter written from Brazil in August of 1952. After being rejected from both the New Yorker and Poetry magazine, this poem appeared in 1955 in the New Republic, and soon after in her Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Poems North and South, A Cold Spring. I'll read The Shampoo. The Shampoo. The still explosions on the rocks, the lichens, grow by spreading gray concentric shocks. They have arranged to meet the rings around the moon, although within our memories they have not changed. And since the heavens will attend as long on us, you've been, dear friend, precipitate and pragmatical. And look what happens, for time is nothing if not amenable. The shooting stars in your black hair, in bright formation, are flocking where? So straight, so soon. Come, let me wash it in this big tin basin, battered and shiny like the moon. The person addressed as dear friend and you doesn't have an identifying personal pronoun, though biographers assume the woman is Lota. The phrases our memories in stanza 1 and attend as long on us in stanza 2 begin to shape the intimacy that Bishop furthers by characterizing her lover as precipitate and pragmatical. Impulsive, given to sudden actions, contrasts with practical, realistic. But her lover is all of these. As if responding to the rhetorical question, where are the shooting stars in your hair going? Or, where will time take us? The speaker will simply act. She will wash her lover's hair in a basin that recalls the moon, and thereby connects them to the moon's cycles and the natural world. Irregular end rhyme, regular 6-line stanzas, and an iambic rhythm sustain this poem. Maxine Kumin, my beloved mentor, said that poetic form allowed her to handle subjects that she found disturbing or emotionally charged. She found the formal containers helped her cool and shape difficult material. In my own work, I love fiddling with tercets and quatrains. I love counting syllables. I lose myself for hours playing with alternating stresses of iambic rhythms studded with sonic irregularities. And it's interesting to note that Bishop's most famous childhood poem, Sestina, and her most famous love poem, One Art, a Villanelle, are both in form. After Loda's death in 1967, Bishop returned to the States. She left to her friend Linda Niemer in Brazil notebooks from which posthumous poems were later published. In 1986, researching her biography of Bishop, Laurie Goldenson visited Linda Niemer in Brazil, and Niemer gave her the poem that became central to Goldenson's biography. It is marvelous to wake up together, published in the American Poetry Review in 1988, 9 years after Bishop's death. It is marvelous to wake up together at the same minute. Marvelous to hear the rain begin suddenly all over the roof, to feel the air suddenly clear as if electricity had passed through it from a black mesh of wires in the sky. All over the roof the rain hisses, and below the light falling of kisses. An electrical storm is coming or moving away. It is the prickling air that wakes us up. If lightning struck the house now, it would run from the 4 blue china balls on top, down the roof and down the rods all around us. And we imagine dreamily how the whole house, caught in a bird cage of lightning, would be quite delightful rather than frightening. And from the same simplified point of view of night and lying flat on one's back, all things might change equally easily, since always to warn us there must be these black electrical wires dangling. Without surprise, the world might change to something quite different, as the air changes or the lightning comes without our blinking. Change as our kisses are changing without our thinking. I love the way Bishop has crammed this poem full of wires dangling, a bird cage of lightning, prickling air, the excitement of the storm housing the excitement of the lovers. In the last stanza, the word change appears 3 times, and it's easy to miss the wonderful rhymed couplets that end each stanza, and the rhyming words at the ends of lines 2 and 4 in each stanza. But the unity these elements create is unmistakable when you hear it. Biographers seem to differ on the identity of the other woman, but Brett Millier believes the notebooks spanned the years 1941 to 46, when Bishop was living with Marjorie Stevens in Key West. However, it could have been from the 30s when Bishop was living with Louise Crane. One of the most beloved, anthologized, and studied poems in English is Bishop's Villanelle, One Art. She started composing it, as Sandy read us, during a period of separation from her last partner, Alice Methvessel, and the archives of Vassar College contain 17 drafts of this poem. The two met when Bishop arrived in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the fall of 1970 to teach at Harvard. Alice, then 27 at the time, was working as an administrative assistant for Harvard's Kirkland House, where Bishop, at 60, had a classroom. The two remained together until Bishop's death in October 1979, except for a brief separation, during which Bishop wrote One Art. In January of 1976, Bishop wrote the following in a letter to Catherine White, her friend and editor at The New Yorker. Quote, "I am having a poem in your magazine fairly soon, I think. The one and only villanelle of my life. It is very sad, capital S, capital A, capital D. It makes everyone weep, so I think it must be rather good in its awful way, and I hope you will like it." One Art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied, it's evident. The art of losing's not too hard to master. Though it may look like, write it, like disaster. The idea that a person should practice losing strikes a rueful, ironic note, as if cumulative, incremental losses could protect us from the greater ones, the real disasters. And the final quatrain with its opening dash, parenthetical descriptors, and 2-word command enacts the speaker's true loss of composure. She forces herself to make the poem's last claim, faltering and qualifying. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. I'll read 3 more love poems that appeared after Bishop's death, all in the New Yorker. The first in 1991. Dear My Compass. Dear, my compass still points north to wooden houses and blue eyes, fairy tales where flaxen-headed younger sons bring home the goose, love in haylofts, Protestants and heavy drinkers. Springs are backward, but crab apples ripen to rubies, cranberries to drops of blood. And swans can paddle icy water, so hot the blood in those webbed feet. Cold as it is, we'd go to bed, dear, early, but never to keep warm. The location of the poem, many believe, is Nova Scotia, with its images of wooden houses, fairy tales, and icy water, the land of Bishop's childhood. Protestants and heavy drinkers suggest a self-referential wink, as Bishop was both. Breakfast Song appeared in the December 2002 issue of The New Yorker, 23 years after Bishop's death. In January of 1974, after falling down a flight of stairs and breaking her shoulder, Bishop asked Lloyd Schwartz, a friend and poet, to bring some things to her hospital room. Peeking into a notebook she requested, he found what he thought were final drafts of a poem called Breakfast Song. Knowing that Bishop might never publish so personal a poem, he copied it and kept it to himself for more than 20 years. Alice Methfeshel, Bishop's literary executor and the subject of the poem, was alive when it appeared in The New Yorker. Breakfast Song. My love, my saving grace, your eyes are awfully blue. I kiss your funny face, your coffee-flavored mouth. Last night I slept with you. Today I love you so, how can I bear to go? As soon I must, I know, to bed with ugly death, in that cold, filthy place, to sleep there without you, without the easy breath and night-long, limb-long warmth I've grown accustomed to. Nobody wants to die. Tell me it's a lie. But no, I know it's true. It's just the common case, there's nothing one can do. My love, my saving grace, your eyes are awfully blue, early and instant blue. This 22-line poem of 6 syllables per line contains a dizzying amount of end rhyme. Blue, do, you, true, face, place, grace, case, die, lie, go, so, no, warmth, death, mouth, breath. Reading it, I feel as though Bishop is wrapping me tighter and tighter, even as the words speak to the inevitable separation coming for the lovers. And finally, here's a tiny, delicate, and witty 6-line poem in rhymed couplets. It's called For the Window Pane. Dear Lily, I liked this view. I also liked to visit you, but scarcely could prolong my stay, so bought the house across the way. Number 28, now you must visit me and see my view. Bishop wrote this poem for Lily Correo de Araujo, a friend of Lota and Elizabeth's, who owned the inn in Ouro Preto, the 18th century colonial town in Brazil that Bishop loved, and where in 1965 she bought a home. When Lloyd Schwartz visited Lily Correo de Araujo in 1991, she showed him this poem, given to her by Bishop to celebrate her purchase of the house across the way. Before I turn to my own poems, I want to mention the Brazilian film called Reaching for the Moon, a fictionalized movie from 2013 about Bishop's life when she was living in Brazil with Lota de Macedo Soares. I also want to note that Bishop was a wonderful watercolor painter, as Sandy mentioned, and you can see her work in a collection called Exchanging Hats, edited by William Benton. As a Sunday painter myself, I also love that I share that connection with her through our shared love of watercolor painting. I'm going to read a couple of my own love poems, and then we'll have a slideshow thanks to Risa, who has prepared it. This poem is called Holiday, and it's from my book called Tiger Heron. Holiday. We slept and woke to the sound of rhythmic surf. Across the room, my friend lay with her book. I listened to the spacious hour, its humane breath on the room, grown large with distant water. In that monastic calm, we took ourselves lightly, rose and ate, walked the half-moon beach, and indulged our ankles with bracelets of kelp. Underwater, the day kept fluttering open, banded butterfly with its eye-concealing stripe, blue angel nibbling on a sponge. And then the boatman put his back to the reef and returned us to shore, where the afternoon waited, palmate, rinsed, thatch-roofed. Day moon overhead, we played chess, long, quiet games, and napped below giant fronds that fanned us and whispered, easy, easy, the way you soothe a high-strung mare, so she can drop her head and graze on a long lead, so slack she thinks the groom has set her free. The next poem is called The Bath, and it's from my book called Giacometti's Dog. The Bath. I like to watch your breasts float like two birds drifting downstream. You like a book, a glass of wine on the lip of the porcelain tub, your music. It is your way of dissolving the day, merging the elements of your body with this body. The room fills with steam like mist off a river, as intimate to imagine you pleasuring yourself. Watery fingers, slow movement into fantasy. You call me in and take my hand in your wet hand. I have to shield my eyes from the great light coming off your body. When you ask me to touch you, I kneel by the water, like a blind woman, guided into the river by a friend. The next poem is called Late Butch Femme. And this is from Domain of Perfect Affection. Long accustomed to playing the butch, I saw you for the femme I thought you were. Long-waisted, well-bred, the hostess who knew to fold the napkin in the wine glass. But I had not watched you square your shoulders before the arborist, determined to take down the holly to save the oak. No, you said, the pin oak goes, the holly stays. The gutter man who wants his check will have to repair the drain he botched. Please have your son call me, you say, your fingers ready for another call. In the cellar, among the foraged dressers, you measure and sand and strip. Come up for the lunch I made you, oh handy lover, with your retractable blade, your small drill, your paintbrushes bristling. The next two poems are from All American Girl. This poem is called Villanelle for a Lesbian Mom. Villanelle for a Lesbian Mom. It wasn't love, but chance, and rather sweet. Your newly weaned son asleep in his crib, your breasts too tender to be touched, and touch itself too early, indiscreet. Who would have believed that over a drink and something to eat, you'd lose your car, locked in overnight? Parking offender, it wasn't love, but chance, and rather sweet. So you found yourself in bed with a grown-up, a feat of sorts. My recent loss had left me wondering when I'd mend or want to be touched. I wanted you, however indiscreet. Your small son breathed and coughed. I tried to sleep, but couldn't ignore what your body engendered in mine. It wasn't love, but chance, and strangely sweet. I like your name. You're used to mine. Ironic repeat of your old lovers. With so few facts, ought two people surrender to touch? Better to date, slow down, try to be discreet. Okay, let's walk around the pond, take a few months or weeks to study each other and see what portends or not. It wasn't love, but chance, and rather sweet. I'm moved by you as well as touched, shy and indiscreet. And the last poem I'll read is also from All American Girl. It's called Midnight Swim. She likes the comely shape of the copper beach and notes the wedge of sky that shows where the tree received stigmata. I like to watch her walk up the path because she is beautiful and sees beauty where I see sadness. In the retreating summer night, in the night of the pond's enormous still eye, in the amphitheater of bullfrog and tree frog and peeper, in the silver steam coming off the water, in the arc of the diving body disappearing, in the splash of a creature nearing we name turtle or snake. The floating dock drifts with its jealous reflection, appearing like a face. And I, who have no claim on this woman or this lake, take the measure of the summer from the fireflies, luminous against dark trees, and the slowly revolving dock. I dream free of its moorings by morning. Preparing this reading brought me back to Elizabeth Bishop's life and poems in wonderful ways. Thank you, Mary, Risa, and Sandy, for giving me a reason to carve out the time for this project. I realized in the process that Bishop maintained an independent spirit in her work to the end, even as she dealt with the constrictions of her time. She wrote and she loved, and these sustained her. So, Risa, will you show us the slideshow that you so kindly prepared? So here we have Bishop in the front row at Vassar, not looking too happy, but she is with a group of women friends, so that's something. Okay, we can move to, here she is as a young woman, looking rather pensive, thoughtful. A little juicy. Okay. This is the copy of the letter from which I read. And you probably can't see it, but there are crossings out and words run together and slashes where she meant to separate words and dots. So it has a lot of kind of personal charm. And then that wonderful PS at the end. It's a fun thing to have.
Yes.
Okay. So here's Elizabeth Bishop. I believe she's smoking a cigarette, and she's with her love, Louise Crane, an early lover. Very stylish. Okay. Oh, Sandy added that they attended Vassar together. Thank you, Sandy. And this is Lota, the Brazilian lover, also smoking. Lota was the person with whom Bishop spent around 15 years in Brazil. And you can read a lot about her in the biographies of Bishop. Very intense looking, I think.
Yeah.
Sandy's adding that she was an architect and she designed a beautiful, very postmodern home. Was it outside of Rio? I think they had an apartment in Rio, and then she designed this home outside of Rio. And a famous park, Sandy said she designed a famous park in Rio as well. Okay. And this is Bishop in Brazil. Again, looking very serious. In the dappled light. Also smoking a cigarette. Okay. And this is the cover of the book that Sandy mentioned, Exchanging Hats, a book of Elizabeth Bishop's watercolor paintings. They're very charming.
Yeah.
You'll see another one coming up. Okay. This is a painting of hers called Daisies that's on the cover of this collection of letters, selected and edited by Robert Giroux. It's hard to see the detail in the painting, but it's quite lovely. I'm glad they used it on this cover. And there's another book cover coming up. Risa. Here we go. This is Laurie Goldenson's biography of Bishop, and the painting is a painting of a stateroom on a ship. You can see the porthole. Sandy, ships. Yep. I don't know how she got a plant into that stateroom, but there's a fan. That painting is on Lavender Review. Mary's giving us some information. And you can see her backpack and valise, and I thought it was interesting that she painted the painting in such a way that we saw where the ceiling ended and the framing of the walls ended to create a feeling of enclosure. This is a very early biography. This one came out in 1983. Okay, the next one, Risa. This is a charming watercolor. And Jan told me that it was a painting of Lota's house in Brazil with a Calder sculpture hanging from the ceiling. I guess they put the tea kettle on the stove and heated water that way.
Yeah.
And I think there's one more painting. Yes, this is a landscape painting of Bishop's, which I find very interesting because she shows both the intimacy of the cultivated areas and the houses, as well as the vast kind of awesomeness of the Brazilian mountains. Thank you, Risa. Back to you, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Robin. For the grand finale, I made hearts. We just heard Robin Becker, card number 18.
Let's unmute and clap.
And let's unmute and clap. Reading from Elizabeth.
Everybody unmute. And let's
Card
clap.
number 27. Yeah,
Thank
let's
Yay.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Amazing. You know, what I really appreciate about your work, Robin, when I first read All American Girl, I spent a lot of time with it because I wrote a review for the Lincoln Journal-Star, the newspaper of All American Girl. And I'm pretty sure it was probably the only time they had ever maybe had a book review of a poet in the Lincoln Journal-Star. But you had sent a media guide ahead to all of us, and we're like, get a review of my book in the newspaper. And so we did. And it was like on the front page, like the front page of the second section. And but in studying All-American Girl. And I was studying your book only after recently had just having come out, and also experiencing that real fear of all the pronouns, or the lack of the pronouns, and what would happen, if one woman told the truth and put those pronouns in. And I remember being in a workshop in Lincoln with a poem without pronouns, and instead of Maxine Kumin being there saying, well, it matters if you want it to matter. The question was, well, why would it matter? It was almost the exact reaction. But nevertheless, when I was reading your work, I was feeling the same way how you described reading Bishop's. And so I am incredibly personally grateful for the work, but also the work is just so strong, everyone. Like, if you want to read, if you have not read the Robin's collections, you are missing a consummate craftsperson, extraordinaire, like none other. You utilize that same precision, that microscopic kind of imagery, and that that diction, and I think of your the way that you craft a line has always made me think about how Bishop probably was crafting her lines. And so to hear you talk about your experience of Bishop and how you learned from Bishop gave me some tremendous insight into your work, which I've long studied, admired, and dare I say, swooned after many, many a time. Thank you so much for today. Today's just wonderful exploration of the legacy between the trading cards today. Here they are. Well, my friends, we're going to move now on to the open mic, our grand finale open mic. I say it with a little sadness, but with great anticipation at the same time. We have just some wonderful readers today for you on the open mic. And let me share with you who we will be hearing from today. First, we will be hearing, again, a poet who is no stranger to the Headmistress Press Collectibles series, or to all of you, because she's appeared with us, as well as her collection with Headmistress Press. And that is the just amazing Ann Tweedy. And if you've not read Ann's work, I do feel like Ann's precision also has that echo as well of Bishop, what we were talking about. I see that in Ann's crafts, in Ann's craft of her poems as well. Well, Ann Tweedy's book, The Body's Alphabet, won the Bisexual Book Award for poetry from the Bi Writers Association, and her work has appeared in Clackamas Literary Review, Rattle, Literary Mama, and many, many places far and wide. She specializes in federal law relating to Native tribes, and recently moved to South Dakota from Washington State and joined the faculty at the University of South Dakota School of Law. Would you please welcome my friend and your friend, the fabulous Ann Tweedy.
Thanks so much, Sandy and Risa and Mary. And that was just an amazing reading and talk, Robin. I'm honored to be here. And I'm really looking forward to the other readers coming next. I have 3 poems. This one is called The Unsaying. 1. My father thought it was safest to be invisible. I can still hear his advice in 5th grade. Don't complain, Anne, don't do that. After a librarian tried to kick me and my best friend out into the night for no reason. Our scraggly hair and hand-me-downs, our skinny limbs, an alarm call. But we can't leave without my father, I'd said, and the librarian, sarcastic, and where is your father, branded us. His descent from the mezzanine averted further shame, a long, dark city walk. When I wrote a letter of outrage a few days later, he told me not to send it. I complied, but the fury festered. The cylinder of it still rigid, like a tree scaffold inside me. Years after, I gave my first boyfriend a blowjob in that same library, down a stack we thought no one would ever look in. 2. When my father was dying of pancreatic cancer, during those endless months, he kicked himself for not standing up to his high school English teacher when she'd declared that his brother had written his paper. And I, who also hear nearly everything anyone has ever said in my head as if it is happening now, felt sorry for him, freighted all those years with her unfaith. The not believing in oneself, the putting stock in others' pronouncements, our family ailment. His fury escaped in inexplicable bursts as cancer invaded organs, randomly accusing my sister of sleeping with guys on the 3rd date, creating a rift that outlasted him, railing at his wife for asking why he'd visited me in the Midwest when my son was little because she hadn't wanted him to go those 9 years ago and he'd stayed silent then. Silence being the thing in oneself that is hardest to forgive. And I have a couple bird poems. This one's called Flagbird. 1. Walking riverward toward the Missouri, the red-headed woodpecker Wagnuka eludes me, flash of white and black that I first mistook for magpie, though rare in my new state. 2. All through the county, they catch insects along farm fences and in fields, leaving quickly if you approach by bike or foot, a mysterious brightness. 3. But more plentiful among these groves near the river. Out here, you can see their red heads from afar as they land on snags and high up in live trees, even on dead fallen boughs along the banks. Always too fast to get a good picture with my long lens, the modern version of Audubon's Long Tom. 4. In the old days, farmers offered bounties for their bodies. Now here on this public land Army Corps flood control project, these woodpeckers are the masters. The orioles, redstarts, waxwings, warblers have to fend off Wagnuka's theft of eggs and nestlings. Grasshoppers may at any moment find themselves stored in live crevices. The humans have to adjust to the knowledge that they may never get a good picture. 5. Wagnuka, who gave the Lakota the flute so long ago, showing the young hunter how to use a beak-drilled branch and wind to make music. The hunter returned to his people without meat, the elk having gotten away but happy. Wagnuka, who visits here only to breed and who, nomadic, may be uncommon next summer. I will try to content myself with glimpses of your gorgeous contrasts. Will practice gratitude that despite the felling of dead trees and creosote and telephone poles that undoes hatching, you've arrived. And thank you. I have another bird poem. It's a little bit on the weirder side. It's called Quiddity. I've done the genetic tests, traced my origins to Northwestern Europe, the British Isles. No real surprises, though I'd wanted to be more Scottish, more mystical Celt than blunt German. Funny the disjunct between what we are and how we imagine ourselves. Lately, that all seems long forgotten. I feel more Ave than hominid. Looking down, I half expect skinny reptilian legs, forked claws. To be the tiger lily flash of Oriole dipping down for grape jelly, how it lands on top of the vertical circular feeder, carefully looks about, then jumps to the lower rung and tips like a teapot. The throat of the dickcissel throbbing with song on a fence post. A miniature vessel, sometimes blessedly oblivious to my peering. The endless shutter snaps my pointer finger enacts. Wagnuka, the red-headed woodpecker who belongs to no one and prefers the barkless snags that protect its young from snakes, or the male bobolink whose spring coat looks drab when it first grows in until the feather ends grind off to reveal the dreamy reverse tuxedo, the blonde cap, who is guided by Earth's magnets because iron oxide inhabits its nasal bristles and olfactory bulb. I tell you, I am more feather than hair, more sharp beak than soft lips, more angled oval than straight up and down. The flight in my heart wants to migrate across great oceans through tedious effort, sweat, muscle, wind lift. Thank you.
As always, wonderful, wonderful work from Ann Tweedy. Thank you, as always, for supporting the reading series. You've been to a number of the readings and you've read a number of times. And and of course, your wonderful collection from Headmistress Press. Folks, go ahead today if you can on this, because this is the last time I'm going to be prompting you to, please, if you have the resources today, pick up some books and from Headmistress Press's site, and of course, the trading cards. Thank you so much, Anne. We move on to a poet. If you have not heard Martina McGowan's work yet, I'm so glad to be able to, that she is with us today here on the Collectibles. I have to say that during the pandemic is when I became acquainted with her work, and it has been a necessity and a revelation, and every single time I am able to hear Martina's work, I feel that deep sense of privilege for getting to hear her poems in her voice. Martina McGowan, my friends,
Thank you,
is a
Sandy.
physician, poet, and writer, artist, advocate, and activist in the wars against social, racial, and sexual injustices. Martina is the author of I Am the Rage, from February 2021 source book, which was an award winner in the social change category of the 2021 International Book Awards, and was listed by the American Academy of Poets on a poetry reading list for the 25th anniversary of National Poetry Month 2021. I remember seeing her name pop up on the list and was so thrilled by the acknowledgement of I Am the Rage there that day when I saw that from the Academy of American Poets, as well as an award, as well as in Women's Day magazine feature. Currently, Martina is the poetry editor for the Elevation Review magazine, and her work appears in numerous literary magazines and anthologies, so very, very honored to have you with us today, Martina.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everybody for the invitation. And that was an awesome presentation. Robin, I've read some about Bishop, but that was great. Thank you very much. I'm going to read two poems. The first is the anchor poem for the book, I Am the Rage. I am the rage, roiling just beneath the surface. I am the dream deferred again. I am the promises needed and repeated but never kept. I am the air between light and dark, fueling flames that burn but can neither be consumed nor satisfy its own abiding hunger. I am the glowing embers you continue to poke and prod with meanness that bubbles over onto the streets. I am the ravenous appetite to destroy something, anything. I am the ever-present clanking chains in the belly of the cargo hold, struggling to love myself, a thing you have taught me to loathe. I am the dismal days and inky skies. I am the niggardly feeling that there is not enough, will never be enough. Money, land, freedom, education, life to satisfy us all. I am the outrage that flares every time you say something foolish like, I thought you were already free. I am the disappointment that breathes hot and silent every time I am dismissed, discharged, dishonored, cast aside, counted as worthless or meaningless. I am the melody that lies inside every Negro spiritual that sings praises of diminishing hopes in this life and a brighter, fairer world in the next. I am the mother who wields the belt that cuts both ways, that beats my children in hopes that you will spare their lives. I am the salty tears of anxious mothers, frightened each time her child crosses the threshold, praying for a return that is not guaranteed, like payment of some impossible garnishee on the lives we want for them. I am the furthest point from you, thrashing about in the sea of doom, gasping for air. I am the dark fiber that runs through our shared history that will not allow you to forget. A constant reminder to both of us that I can never go home, can never find home. I am the rage running unbridled through the streets. I am the fire this time. I am the rapacious thirst seeking justice for all on these dusky days and obsidian nights. I am the rage that lives within the powder keg of unfulfilled lives, awaiting the spark. I am the rage. I am the lost sheep. I am the muted prayer that we will see each other clearly one day. And my second poem, The Sea Goddess Calls. From oceans and streams, she calls to me when I am depleted, searching, longing. To the water's edge, joy and sadness linger here, creation and destruction. She chants in an ancient rhythm my heart understands. The high-pitched tinkle of errant streams, the tenor of churning white water, the basso of the unsettled sea, imploring me to remember what is important. Heart pounding, longing, near shattering, keeps pace with the storm brewing inside my head. Briny tears on parched lips, she calls to me again. Is this a good day to rejoin me, to come home to the sea? Salt water stirring within and without. No more tears to shed, no salt or water to lend to living things. I stand at the shoreline listening, still hunting and hoping for healing. From immersion, self-baptism, I rise one more time, knowing I may die 1,000 tiny deaths. Yet I am resurrected and restored, nourished and replenished at water's edge. Until that day, my answer becomes yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martina McGowan. The collection is I Am the Rage, and you today here on the Collectibles heard the title poem, please support everyone's work today. And I certainly, again, I can't say enough about your Martina's collection being out in the world, examining, as she said, our shared history, our shared histories, and how prismatically that is presented differently depending, on our lived experiences. Thank you so very much for your work, and of course for being here today on our final reading of the Collectibles trading card reading series. Well, our next poet is Sharon Rizk. Sharon was born in Clatts County, Oregon during World War II. A California resident for most of her life, she received a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and returned to school as an older adult to earn a Master of Science and a Doctorate of Psychology in Clinical Psychology. She's a retired psychology professor and psychotherapist, and now resides in a mountain retreat in an LGBTQ intentional community near Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she is a published poet and also has one CD collection of her original work, The Shadow of Your Longing, Poems to Grow With, which is available on Amazon.com. Would you please all welcome Sharon Rizk. And Sharon, just a reminder to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now? I am so humbled by hearing all of you amazing people. Yeah, it's hard to follow. I have two poems to share. The first one is called In a Ditch. And I have a couple of people to thank who are actually listening right now, who gave me feedback on these two poems, by the way. In a Ditch. They did Samu this morning at the Tao's Zen retreat. Her task, remove, clean, replace stones lying in a drainage ditch. She remembered being 5, collecting stones in San Francisco. They were friends, guardians of her secrets, held close inside a toy box beside her bed. She trusted them, their coolness, the way they nestled in her palm. But one day the family moved, dumped her stones into a vacant lot. She could not tell them, had no words, feelings and inconvenience. If I steal a stone from a drainage ditch, tell it my secrets and place it in your hand, will you, even under deafness, keep it safe? The second one, thank you. The second one is called Necessary. There is an epigraph, quote, an openness and empathy was necessary if attention was to matter. That is from Mary Oliver in her book, Our World. I watch her from a window as she walks away. That familiar stride, but with a difference. No arm swing to propel her gait, instead wrapped tight around her torso. See her, I want to run after, scream, but my throat is full of razor blades. Hands spill over with tiny slivers of two hearts, jagged puzzle pieces that will demand a new picture. Feel them. Fires ravage Australia. They are relentless. People huddle by the shore, gasp, die. Mute creatures leap, hide, die. Even firefighters overwhelmed. Some die. Smoke envelops, blocks the sun. Smell it. Coyote cries in this mountain meadow beside this new house, paces back and forth perturbed before moving out of sight into the forest. I have disrupted what he knows. Hear his lament. When she lay dying and wanted only to be taken home, I said no. She did not rail nor grouse. We adapt, we survive or not. We seek, find comfort, even when disappointment is the only dish set before us. Taste it. Thank you.
We adapt, we survive or not. I could palpably experience those words on my tongue, the power of those words, Sharon. Sharon Rizk, thank you so much for being with us today. You know, with your lamentations and your prismatic power of words. Well, Risa asked if I would close out with a poem for today. So I'm going to read one poem with you all from Boats for Women, because I have boats on the tide today. And I'm going to do the most daring thing I could do in reading a poem from Boats for Women, which is to read a villanelle. Why would you read a villanelle after one art? Oh my gosh. But I'm going to read a poem called The Girl Who Catches Everything, because I think it's the final poem in Boats for Women. And for me, it has that sense of the past, the present, and the future all being in dialogue, you know, with each other, in that only in the way that the swirl of a villanelle can do. And I'll dedicate it to two of my poetry mentors, one who's here today, Robin Becker, and to Elizabeth Bishop. This is The Girl Who Catches Everything. We have all the time in the world, in pants pockets, in the space between our breasts, on our tongues, and in the future twirling over us like a girl's fire baton hurled into the stadium sky. In her hands, she will catch all she has all the time. The world will not throw her off balance, despite the swirl of the crowd anticipating her drop, the stress on the edge of every tongue. In the future, twirling, naked in bed, we will remember these baton girls we did not risk the chance to undress when we had all the time in the world. We will remember their hair, every curl we did not allow our fingers to address, or our tongues, or the future twirling away from their spectacular bodies. We will pearl our lives with each minute lost. The rest we will have all the time in the world and on our tongues where the future twirls. Thank you so much, everybody. We heard today in the grand finale of our open mic, Ann Tweedy, Martina McGowan, and Sharon Rizk, excuse me, with a little cameo from me at the end. I would be very remiss if I did not also come back and thank, of course, Robin Becker, reading from the work of Elizabeth Bishop. But I also want to share with you, because this is our final reading of the Collectibles Lesbian Trading Card Reading Series, remind you of the names of the poets that we've heard during our time together on the third Saturday of every month since last August. We had our features, Vicky Now, Marty McConnell, Chinny Chen, Constance Merritt, Alicia Mountain, Leslie Newman, Minnie Bruce Pratt, Julie Marie Wade, Jessica Jacobs and Nicole Brown, JP Howard, Judith Barrington, and today our final feature in the series was none other than, as I like to say, the indomitable Robin Becker. And on the open mic, not in the order of appearance, here are the names of poets. And what I love to say is that any of the poets that grace these stages could be the featured poets and vice versa. You heard from Amanda Vong. Many of you today are here in the audience. So again, I want to send a real shout out to all of you and thank you for being here. Amanda Vong, Ann Drysdale, Mary Miriam, of course, one of our intrepid co-hosts and co-founders of Headmistress Press did in fact read in the open mic. Reiki Kaepernick, Elena Dykewoman, Sarah Youngblood Gregory, Samantha Pius, hello, shout out to you thank you, Freisha McKee, Callie Lightfoot, hello, so glad you're with us today, Jessica Jewell, Deanna Padigo, Ann Miles, Heather Tompkins, Jillian Ebersol, S.G. Huerta, Sarah Caulfield, Catherine Fallon, Nettie Kovragaru, Mary Oishi, Colleen Shoshona McKee, Caroline Earlywine from Canada joined us, Jen Rouse, Laura Foley, Ann Walsh Donnelly joined us over from County Mayo, Lita Kurth, Megan Quinn, Carolyn Ball, Liz Nagayan, Bonnie J. Morris, hello, good to see you today. Gail Thomas, Jennifer Abbott is here today with us. Thank you for your reading. Virginia Petrucci, Shelby Pinkin, Megan Alpert, Emily Moan Slate, Hillary Brown, Liz All, hello to you. Thanks for being with us. Lynn McGee, of course, Ann Tweedy read with us today, but here you are on the list of folks who read. Sylvia Pollock, hello, thank you for being with us today. And I end with the person who holds all the trading cards, Yeva Johnson, hello, and thank you for being here today. I think you've been at every reading. My friends, you've been listening today to the Collectibles Lesbian Trading Card Reading Series for our final reading. I have enjoyed, honestly, every minute of the dialogue between the cards, but more importantly, the poets and the community that this created month after month as we were in the pandemic and moving through and with the pandemic. How we created space for our lives, truly mattered to me. And based on how you came to be devoted to the series, I can tell that it mattered to you as well, that we had a space, to share what it is like to be in the LBT community and to have that space through the Lesbian Trading Card Reading series from Headmistress Press. Before we close out today, I just want to say huge hearts to the heart and souls of Headmistress Press who are with us today. That is Mary Miriam and Risa Denenberg. Here are your hearts from me, from everyone. And how about we unmute and give a final round of applause to all our readers for today, to all our readers from the past 12 months, and also to Risa and Mary for their tremendous vision of holding space, with Rita Mae Reese also helping out with that work as well. Want to acknowledge Rita Mae as well.
And Sandy Yanone, the famous host, the hottest host in the United States, if not the world.
You're too kind. I'm so sorry I don't have my top hat today, my friends. I just couldn't travel with my top hat out here to Connecticut, but it has been really it has been really my distinct pleasure to be with you every single month. I'm the luckiest lesbian in the land because I had a front seat for all of these tremendous readings from start to finish every single month. I hope that you will continue to share your voices. Your poems matter. Think about all the things that Robin said about when our poems lacked pronouns and what it was like to have pronouns, and what it has been like to speak from our hearts and our bodies and tell our truths. And I think of that line of Muriel Rukeyser's, what if one woman told the truth about her life, the world will crack open. Paraphrase, of course. And in that spirit of creating that line of legacy, we all can carry forward the telling of our lives. Go forth, my friends. I hope that you will feel free to join me on Sundays. Cultivating Voices live poetry. I've been able to feature a number of you and hope to feature many of you in the future. Contact me anytime, and I look forward to seeing you all over Zoom and in person someday in some venue, hearing your remarkable poetry. Well, that is it for today's program. I send you peace and much love and poetry.